Juggling tons of tasks in the classroom is overwhelming, especially when it comes to documenting students' behavior and communicating with the parents. An incident will happen in class, positive or negative, and you'll try to remember, all right, I'm going to make a note of that at the end of the day. You get there and you're like, who was that and what did they do? If you even remember anything happened, we could use some help.
So what if we told you there's a tool to help with exactly that? On today's episode, we're actually going to dig into that tool and see just how it can make your experience as a teacher in the classroom so much easier in that area. In fact, maybe even seamless. Welcome to the EdTechUnpacked podcast, where we inspire and equip educators to create meaningful learning experiences, highlighting a thoughtful approach to the integration of technology as we teach and transform the lives of our students. I'm Aaron Long.
And I'm Desmond Suarez, and we are passionate about helping educators learn how to better use technology to engage their students.
We're excited to welcome Dr. Maria Andersen to the show today. Desmond and I met Maria last summer at the ISTE conference in San Antonio. And Maria is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Socrait. So we're super excited to welcome you here today. Maria, maybe start out by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show. I am a middle school teacher in Sandy, Utah, and I've been at my school for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was a college professor, taught math and chemistry for many years, and I've been in the EdTech world on and off. So I kind of go EdTech, back to a classroom, EdTech, back to a classroom. I love to hike. I love to read, travel. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. That's me.
Awesome. You say Sandy, Utah? Never heard of it, but I picture Utah and it's like all sand. So seems appropriate that that's the name of a town or city in Utah. Well, very cool. Well, hey, Maria, as we're starting out here, before we really get into it, we like to start with a get to know you question. And today I've got one cooked up. We're going to start with you. All right. So we're obviously talking about technology today, but what's the best low-tech classroom behavior management system that you've either used or seen used before?
I mean, haven't we all used sticky notes? I mean, this is kind of the end-all be-all of, I've got to keep track of some data. I'm going to keep it on a sticky note as on my computer, and they just stack up all around you. I think that's probably the one that I see that's the most common that I've used.
That's a great one. Desmond, how about you?
All right, I'm going to go get it. It's right over there. Hold on.
Well, maybe while he's getting it. Well, actually, let's wait. Let's see how quick Desmond is. And I like that we're doing this live here. What do we have, Desmond?
All right, I'm back.
All right, that was fast.
Yeah.
I almost went while you're gone, but I'm like, I felt your intensity, and I'm like, this is going to be quick.
I have a little podium over there where I teach from. But I don't think this is a new one, but popsicle sticks. I've got all my students' names on these popsicle sticks, and I have different classrooms and classes here, and each of them in a different mug. And I buy a bunch of popsicle sticks on Amazon. Oh, actually, I buy a bunch of popsicles. No, I don't. And then I just hand them to the kids and say, write your name on them. And then I draw them out. And it's a great way to like form groups or pick the next student to do something. And I like it because we all have tendencies of calling on the same students. As hard as we try not to, we have the tendencies of calling on the same students. And so this is a great way to, especially for classroom management, to call on a random assortment of students. And I try to make it as random as possible so that I do call on different students in my classroom.
That's great. In fact, before I say mine, Maria, when you were talking about the sticky notes, have you guys ever used the app? I don't know if it's made by Post-it or not, but this has been probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago was the last time I used it. But we would do brainstorming sessions when we were doing story writing with my 6th graders. And I'd have them write like their chunk of the story on a sticky note. And this app, and so I know we said low tech, but you could take a picture and then digitally,
I know, you're failing.
digitally reorganize them. So it's like low tech / then it converted to high tech. But I loved it because you could then organize your thoughts like you would on a whiteboard, but you could do it kind of collaboratively wherever you could zoom in on them. And so I just found that to be a really fun way that combined your low tech with some high tech.
Okay, but we really are drifting because the question was about behavior solutions.
Oh, I know, but it's also EdTech Unpacked, right? So
I got
Oh,
a better one for classroom management that, other than behavior.
better than well, you got that's coming up. I mean, you got the primo one here for classroom management.
Okay, I've got the better one, but I got a better low tech one.
okay. Well, go for it. Share it with us.
So, if we're going to talk about just classroom management solutions, I think that whiteboards around a classroom are amazing. I've been using them since I started teaching, like back in 2002. And being able to send students in pairs or in sets of three to whiteboards to do some kind of activity where you can easily observe everything and unpack what they have in their heads. I think it's also a great way to manage energy levels of students. So when you have a really, squirrely class, giving them some chance to stand up and move around is really amazing.
I like that. Wall ones mounted on the walls, or like the stand-up ones that move around.
So I always make my classrooms with whiteboards all around the room on the walls. I have enough for 10 groups of kids to work at a time. But in other situations, I also have a set of whiteboard lap boards. So like when I used to be a college professor, you couldn't always guarantee you're going to be in the same classroom. So I would just have a rolling suitcase full of these whiteboards and pens and erasers, right? And I would just roll them to the next class. And there's something magical about a vertical, they call them now in the research, vertical surface areas or VSA, right? And there's something magical about the ability to erase so easily. You might have noticed that students are somewhat unwilling to commit words to paper because they feel like it's permanent. They just don't do it enough. They feel like it's really permanent. And when you let them work on a surface where it's so easy to erase, they start to guess a little bit more and to be a little bit more brave, right? And they have to talk to each other as they work. So it's magical.
Huge fan of whiteboards.
It's forcing collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. That collaboration piece. So we've referenced, I think, on another episode, Desmond, but what you're describing there. And by the way, I started my teaching career in 2002. And I don't know when the book came out, but I read a book called Make Space by the Stanford School of Design. And the couple big things they promote are lots of whiteboard spaces, whether they're vertical or horizontal. So I went to like whiteboard tables and whiteboards on the walls. Flexible seating is a big thing that they promote, but basically it's classroom design, but thoughtful design that kind of facilitates the function of the space. And so it's still a great book. You could pick it up today and probably feel like it was written for today because I think it's just a great book.
There's actually, I don't know if you've heard of the book Building Thinking Classrooms.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
So it's called Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics in particular. But I actually think that anybody who's interested in this technique should read this book because the amount of research they've put into why things work is really important to read to like understand the backstory about, like why is it that random seating is better than like seating by seating chart, and why is it that you want to use groups of 2 or 3 but not 4, and they unpack a whole bunch of research they did around why vertical surface areas works and the type of questions you should ask. And it's a super great read for many fields. It is written about math, but I promise you can find applications to other subjects.
Well, I got to read that one now. That was a good sell.
Well, what's your low tech, Aaron?
Well, so I said low tech, not no tech. So this is a little tech, but
He's gonna cheat.
I'm a big. It's not cheating. It says low tech. Okay. Stoplights. Okay. I love the affect of them in the room as well. Like an old classic. And so I've looked for these to try to buy them, and they've always been just a little too expensive to buy an old decommissioned stoplight, like from an actual street. But it's low tech, not no tech, and just as an indicator for, hey, how much noise is allowed right now. So really basic, but it's kind of nostalgic too. So I'm a big fan of classroom stoplight indicator, especially for younger kids. This wouldn't be so much for high school, but
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, well, let's get into our discussion. It sounds like we could go on to all sorts of rabbit holes. And Maria, we might have to have you on for some more discussions about some other topics that we dig into on here.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
But real briefly, we'll try not to make it too long, but you were telling us before the show that you've been using AI or not AI in all sorts of different ways. Tell us how you've been using AI in the classroom recently.
So one of the ways I do use AI is with students. This is going to sound like heretical. So listen to the whole thing. I let students do research with AI for their presentation projects. And one of the shifts I made in my middle school classroom, I teach an elective called Technology and Society. And one of the shifts I made when AI started to be really prevalent in student, projects and use was to, instead of me kind of guiding and teaching the whole unit, I now guide and teach a core of the unit, which is about 50% of what I used to teach. And then I have the students do presentations on topics around that core. And so I actually give them a selection of 30 to 40 topics they can choose from because I want very specific things being taught around the core. I use AI to help me generate that list. Then they pick a topic and I give them research questions around that topic, which I also use AI to generate. I like screen them, make sure it's what I want them to go over. But I'd never be able to do that for 30 to 40 topics without this. And then the students do their research with AI. And the way we arrived at this was honestly just because it's almost impossible for them to do research any other way about modern topics. Like they're researching modern communications technologies, satellite communications, things that are like real stuff. But the problem is that one of the best sources of information is documentaries on YouTube where a creator has unpacked it and they can't use YouTube. And then they go to start looking at websites, and half the websites are blocked by the filters at the schools, right? And we went to use Wikipedia, and Wikipedia had a big ad on the page, one of the days we did this, and they all got blocked by the ad and had to sign up with an email to get past it, right? And I was like, what is this crazy world we live in? And of course, if they Google something, what's the first thing they see now on the page? The AI summary, right? And in fact, they would see the AI summary. It would be a full page on their iPad. And I'd say, well, look for websites. And they'd be like, where do we find websites? The kids have already forgotten that websites used to be on Google, right? They don't scroll past the AI part. And then the next 5 to 10 websites were ads that companies have paid for placement, right? Because they're researching modern topics. And so, it's all ads for communication satellites, And so in the end, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to teach them how to do research with AI then. And so I have to teach them, I model it for them and we do a topic together. And they, we did BBS services together, which they know nothing about. Right. And so they had to research with AI and then tell me what they had learned. And I would write down in our own words what they had learned, right, on a document. And so after we'd done that, I was like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to read and then summarize in your own words, read and then summarize. And then we take that and run it through a second AI for an accuracy check on the first AI and on their rephrasing of things, right? So I've taught them how to use one and then check with another one. But the truth is we just can't access enough resources to do the research in any traditional way. It's become almost impossible in a school. And so that's one of the ways I use AI in the classroom. That's an appropriate use of AI, I think. I actually don't use a ton of AI with them for other things. Mostly we use it for research.
That's such a inspiring and sad story at the same time. It feels like we have, and I run into the similar problems at our school, is that trying to protect the kids, we've actually created problems in some cases. And I'm an advocate of having filters at school and having, excuse me, tiered steps on the filters too of, as they get older, they get more access or less access if they mess up. But yeah, if they can't access the original information, the original documents, how do they do the assignments that we ask them to do? And then they are all the time the students are going to just use the summary anyways and not go and fact check it. And so helping them learn how to fact check it, I think, is a good thing. Man, it's the way we ask our students to do research and the way we do research is changing very rapidly.
Yeah, it is. And you just can't expect, I don't think we can expect kids or even college students to continue to do research the way we OG did research back in the days of card catalogs and, accessing journals and things like that. I mean, it's just, as a person who has sometimes had to spend time outside of academia, during those times, I have not been able to get a hold of research, like journal research, right? I've always had to have a friend who's still inside of academia who would be willing to download these things for me and pass them on to me, right? And so the whole system is kind of absurd that we teach them to do things with research they will never have access to again in the rest of their life.
That's a really great point. Yeah, I remember taking my master's and falling in love with being having access to those journals, and and as you finish your master's, you just really get into seeing the value of them. It feels like I was like, all right, now I'm going to start looking up things that are not in an assignment, but I'm interested in, and then I lose access. And now I would love to have access, but there's no practical way for someone not enrolled in school to get access to journals.
Well, yeah, hearing you talk there, Maria, it is kind of sad. I mean, I appreciate that summary of how you got around to how you're using AI, but it's again, your problem solving, I think, is what's really key here. You're figuring out how to leverage the technology, and hey, that's what we're going to get into here in a minute. That you're really going to get into and share with us. We're excited for that. And on that note, maybe share with us what led you to create Socrait in the first place.
Well, I was teaching a couple years ago, and I think I had 230 students and 4 or 5 preps, and I was feeling a little bit of burnout. Yeah, and I'm very organized. I'm very on top of things. I don't have children at home. Like I don't have a lot of the stressors that other teachers have, and I've been teaching for a long time. And I just started to feel like I couldn't possibly go into the classroom the next day. Like I could literally like walk away and not come back. I was like, what is causing this? And so I'm a former entrepreneur. I sold a company in 2021, um, and after that sale, by the way, I just wanted to be back in a classroom. So that's what I did. And, and so I started to like pay attention to what was causing it. And I realized it was really 2 things. One is the cognitive load of the school day is just crushing. It is crushing. The amount of questions we ask and answer, the amount of data we process, the amount of counts we're keeping in our head as we try to teach. Because, of course, to do your job well, you have to enforce your own consequences, which means you have to count how many times something has happened with 27 kids and then redo that data, the next hour with 27 different kids or however many you've got, right? So that was just crushing during the day. And then the second problem is that at the end of the day, when you finally have time to breathe, your brain is so exhausted, you don't remember what happened today. You remember the worst of the day, right? Because that's human nature. So remember the worst interaction you had with students during the day, and you can't even remember all the details of that. You can't remember what you taught. You can't remember, how your sections got off of each other. It's like all gone. And that's the moment when you open your email and like the principal wants to know how this kid did in classes today, and the special ed case manager wants to know what another kid needs to catch up on. And like there's all these people who now want to access the data you experienced during the day. The truth is you can't answer any of these things well, and you're exhausted. And so you close your computer and you realize that you're going to have just as bad of a day tomorrow because you're not going to get any of this stuff done that would maybe help your day go better tomorrow. And you do it again the next day, right? And the real realization for me, the insight that built Socrait, was that I was saying all that data out loud all day long. And if I just had like a note taker who could like organize that data and like put it together in ways that made sense and could be looked at longitudinally over time and help me remember what I taught in different sections, and that I could teach calmer all day. I could teach really focused on the human interaction during the day and not with a count above every kid's head. And did I call on every student? And did I like that if I had that kind of a note taker that could prompt me at the end of the day to be like, oh, here's the kids you could call on tomorrow. And here's like, I could not have that exhaustion during the day and use that data at the end of the day to like get all that other stuff done that people want with the energy to do it, right? And then I realized that with the AI we have now, I might not even have to do some of that work at the end of the day. If the data was there, the AI could take it the steps further that's needed. So like if the principal wanted a summary of the behavior over a couple weeks for a kid, well, if the data was all there and AI could like write the summary, I wouldn't have to relive it all, right? And if I had kids who were absent, an AI could write a summary of what they missed. And so I started to think about it, and I was like, I think we have all the right technology in place to do this for teachers. And I know that doctors have this technology. I'm sure you've all been to a doctor's appointment or physical therapy appointment. They're like, do you mind if I use my AI note taker? Right. And they're using it to do the insurance coding and to get the notes into the systems and things like that. And lawyers use it as they meet with clients to get all the details. I'm like, teachers are professionals too. We deserve to have technology like this. And we meet with more people a day than any of these other professions. It's a ridiculously crazy amount of data. And so that's where Socrait was born, is this idea that like we should do something about this.
And I like that you started with, acknowledging the extreme cognitive load that, teachers face daily. It's exhausting, and this, I relate this to my own personal struggle, like having a good diet, friends that like don't work in education that have like their diet really dialed in. They're always like, why don't you just like, clean up your diet and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, if you knew the amount of like, just mental and, I guess it comes down to the cognitive load side, but the amount of energy expended just controlling my interactions with the zillion different students and teachers and parents in the throughout a day, at some point you run out. You have to have an area where you're maybe not as in control, and for me, it just happens to be food. And so I'm like, I really struggle to eat well at school because it's one thing I don't have to manage, but it comes back to that same point of you're managing so much. It's so much energy. So I appreciate that your goal here is saving time, reducing workload for teachers, but also, embedded in this is doing a better job as well at all of that kind of nuance of tracking that you're right is possible through AI. So I really appreciate your goals there that kind of drove you to create this. So I'll just mention this real quick. If you like this kind of content, we just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe, because we'd love for you to get notifications when we drop a new episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or any of the social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe. And with that, Desmond,
let's unpack the tech. All right, now, Maria, if you could describe, because we've talked a while around Socrait, but now if you could describe the promise of Socrait and how it works.
So Socrait is a voice companion for teachers. It listens while you teach your class. It actually does not record. This is super important. There's no recording happening. We stream your class, we take notes from it, and it's the notes and the data that we're saving in structured formats for you. And so what you do is there's a little phone app, and you use that to stream your class. There's nothing being saved on the phone. And we used a phone because it can follow you around easily. We can send you a free phone pouch if you want to just hang it around your neck, or if you use any Bluetooth device with your phone, like an earpiece or a lapel mic or something, that works too. And so we're just listening while you teach your class and grabbing that data for you. And then at the end of class, you just switch to your next class or stop, right? The data all goes to a web app. So you go to your computer, your school computer, you open up the app, and there's all your data waiting for you. So at the current moment, we'll find things for you like all of the warnings and praises, or whatever you call those at your school. And they're organized by kid. So, you can see that like Desmond's got warned 5 times in class, but Aaron actually had a good day and only got warned twice.
Why does he always get the good stuff?
Well, I do what I'm told, Desmond.
And so there'll be the praises you gave to students as well. So that's all organized for you in a very quick to access list. We give you a class summary of what you taught, but that includes at the very top of it the most useful thing, which is did you change any assignments? Did you mention any assignments, right? Because if you want to send this to students as like you were absent, here's how to catch up, you want that at the top. You also want it at the top because you've forgotten like what you did, right? And we all add nuances to assignments when kids ask us about them in class and then forget we've done that, right? So that's at the top. And then it's kind of like what happened in class today for the kids who were absent. And then after that, it's like the content that you taught that day, right? So it's giving you a very nice, robust description of what happened. So a lot of teachers like to send these out to absent kids or look back at them when they're making an assessment, things like that. And then one of the other things we do from your voice is we grab all of the reminders, all the to-dos that you say out loud. So if you say something like, oh, you're right, that is due today, but I'm going to move the due date to Friday. Just like magic, it goes to a to-do list for you. Like we actually guess from what you're saying out loud that you want to have a follow-up on this. And so if you say something like, oh yeah, Desmond, I will grade that paper tonight. You're right. You turned it in late and I forgot. Boop, there it goes to your to-do list, right? As you say it out loud. And so we can also track like attendance to some extent based on what you say out loud. So we know which kids you interacted with. So we know they're there. If you mention a kid is absent, we know the kid is absent, right? And that's actually important because we then mix that absence data with the behavioral data for you. So we're all teachers. So we know that kids' behavior in classroom is very much affected by how often they're in class and their absences. But it's very hard to see that data together. And so that data gets mixed together. And so now in Socrait, releasing this week, you can actually look at behavior over time. And so student by student, right? And one of the things I haven't mentioned yet that we do, remember I talked about how AI could do some of this work for you? So since the beginning of Socrait, we've been able to like generate a parent email for you about the praises a kid got or the corrections they got during class. And it'll just write it for you, right? Like, here's what happened in class today. Please help me with this behavior. Help me help your child, neutrally worded, and a lot of teachers are just like, oh my gosh, this, I'll use it for this, right? But it's even better now because you can do it over time now. And we're not just doing emails anymore. We have phone call scripts. We have summaries if you need one for an IEP or a spreadsheet somewhere, an MTSS report, something like that, right? And so you can actually go in now and get, you can say, I want the data over a month. I want to include, praises, warnings, and absences. And I want a phone call script because I'm about to have a parent-teacher conference. And there it is. All the data about that, all your interactions with that kid right there. You would never remember it all.
You guys have built a lot of stuff under the hood there, and I actually think I have a pretty solid picture of some things I would love. So I'm not actively in the classroom currently, and so I'm more on the admin side. So I haven't had an opportunity to...
We're building some things you would love too.
No doubt, right? But I'm looking at this and thinking, boy, there's some things I think I would love as a teacher beyond just like the saving time over communication side of things. But question for you, and by the way, Desmond, I think it's important to note, we don't do a lot of these like product kind of, this isn't even a product review. This is more of a highlight today on this episode. So just to be clear, we invited Maria on because we thought this was a really interesting product as a good example of classroom AI assistance, kind of like how AI can assist teachers in the classroom. And so none of this is being paid for or sponsored in any way. This is literally just a natural interview with Maria here today. I just want to note that. But I'm listening to this too, and I want to ask you, how does Socrait impact the way a teacher teaches? And then I want to tag on to it because I'm like, I literally think this would have a big impact on me if I was using it in a key way. But how do you see that working?
So we see a really interesting progression as teachers use Socrait. So one of the first things that happens as teachers use Socrait is they immediately start using student names in the classroom more. Because for us to categorize the data, you have to say the student's name somewhere in the praiser warning or when you're calling on them, things like that, right? And so the first thing that happens is teachers tell us, oh, I'm like using student names a lot more than I used to, which is actually good pedagogical practice. Students hear their name, they know that they're being recognized by their teacher. The second thing they say is that they notice they don't praise as much as they thought. They start to shift. They start to pay attention to what they are warning about, because now they know. It's not a vague recollection that a kid got in a lot of trouble. It's like, let me unpack what the issue actually was. Was it technology warnings? Was it out of seat warnings? Was it talking over me warnings? Was it, right? Like, and that's actually really valuable data for a teacher, because if you don't remember what the patterns are, you can't really target the right intervention for it, right? The right strategy. And so that they start to pay attention to the praises and the strategy. And then we hear that they start to be more specific in their praises, especially because it's not very interesting to have us write a praise email if all you say is, Desmond, great job. But if I say, Desmond, great job on your slide design, I'm so impressed by how hard you worked today, that can go into a praise email, right? And so they start to get more specific about their praises, because the more specific you are, the better the follow-up communication would be, the better the examples you can talk to parents about in those parent-teacher conferences, right? And so we do see it shifting how teachers interact with students. And then we have a lot of teachers who tell us that they teach calmer, because they're not escalating with every warning they give. They're not counting anymore. They're letting it happen, unless it gets really out of control. They're letting it happen, and they're looking at the data afterwards, and they're figuring out a strategy for tomorrow.
Because they can do interventions that aren't in the actual moment as much. They can do interventions that are more meaningful and thought out.
Yeah. And so for the first time, we're like armed with our full memory of the day, right? And that's really valuable for being able to have better relationships with students.
Hearing you describe these things, so I mean, you kind of stole mine right off the bat of how I think it would impact me. So I don't even need to go back over it. But it's basically what I think it brings a different kind of awareness, and really helps a teacher prospectively focus more on the craft of teaching, because teaching is a craft. It's like some of those nuances you were just describing about just being more aware of how much positive praise you give versus kind of negative correction. Some teachers struggle with that more than others, but to a degree, all of us could probably do better. Being more intentional to be positive. I think that's really key. So I just love that idea of like, let me take a second at the end of my day, look at my report. Okay. And I would look at it more for me as a teacher than a student. It's like an evaluation of me in a way. How did I do today? And then let me think through how I can do better tomorrow. So like, let me really just play with the craft of teaching and use the tool that way. I think that's such a powerful potential of this tool.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things I'm gonna push back on just one thing. It's not an evaluation of how you did today. It is simply the data about the day, right? And I think that's really key, because teachers, the job that we all do is super hard. And the idea that you would be evaluated every day on how you did would just be a pile on, right? So what we try to do is give you back the data and give you as much of the work being done for you as we can, without it feeling evaluative at all.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking me. This might not be at all like your leading motivation for why you built the tool, but I actually would love something like that. I mean, you probably know, like a lot of teachers probably want more feedback, and the feedback simply being not like you did good or bad at this, but just even that raw data, I can evaluate myself based on the data provided. So I'm thinking of my own critical evaluation of how I did, not like, oh, someone's evaluating me, not at all. But I could just see it being a great tool.
Yeah. I just want to be really clear here, because we believe strongly that it's your voice, it's your data, it's your peace of mind, right? Like it's very important that this be the teacher's data, and they can use it to reflect and do things. Now, like in the future, I want to build something actually where the teacher can say, I am working on this thing and I would like help with it. Help me. And in that case, when they've proactively said, like, I would like to make sure I'm stating objectives every day, or I would like to make sure that I'm calling on all the students every day, or whatever it is, but then we surface that as like, here's a moment you could have done this a little better, or we don't want to go in and do that if the teacher's not ready for that. I mean, a lot of us right now are in survival mode with these kids who are post-COVID, device addicted, very little communication ability, right? We're in survival mode. We're not in, I'm going to improve these other things. We're in, please help me manage my classroom. Like that's the first step. And, even at this point in the school year, we have weeks where we're like, wow, they're right back to where they started.
I want to go back to your statement about the I think evaluation, like it's not an evaluation, and this last summer when we met you at ISTE, there was another product which I'm not going to name, but Aaron and I was really struck by our responses to the two different products, and they're in the same category. The other product has a hardware element that's a lot more developed, but your approach was more a teacher assistant focused, and the other one had that focus, but it felt much more like a classroom monitor, like an administrator's assistant more than a teacher's assistant. And my first red flag when I saw your product, and I feel like you've addressed a lot of my questions, but is okay. Principals and administrators are going to just dive into this. What access do administrators have to this data?
So it's a great question. And I have like some very strong lines drawn in the sand on this one. I think that, of course, we need some of this data to be shared with other stakeholders at the school. I mean, how great would it be if the principal is about to sit down with some parents, if they don't have to email the teachers to ask, what has been going on with Desmond in your classroom? Sorry to pick on you guys. You're just the one names in front of me right now. And I think that in aggregate, the principal should have access to the data for a student, like the summary of that student's behavior across, all of their classes should be available to the principal. But that's an aggregate summary, not a specific teacher said this, right? And I think that a special ed teacher who's managing a caseload of students should be able to get like if the teacher gives permission, like, yes, case managers can have all access to my class summaries for the students that they're managing, right? Because that would save everybody time. The case manager would not have to come to the teacher and ask them to send the report. The teacher could just proactively say, yeah, I trust my case manager and they should know what happened in class so they can help that student, right? So I think it's a matter of permission and aggregation. And I also know that for teachers, this is going to be amazing for their evaluations. Because what's the problem with evaluation right now? Desmond, you're in a classroom. You tell me, what's the problem with teacher evaluation right now? How does it happen?
Well, I'm going to caveat that my administrators do a great job, and they mostly give me they really work hard to give us positive evaluations. But when evaluations go wrong, it's because, well, the teacher and the administrator have a different story, right? The teacher feels that, hey, no, I am doing this, and the administrator's like, no, you're not, and the data or the information is misaligned.
Well, and it's usually confined to like a 30-minute observation period, right?
That too, yeah.
Now, the checklists for what teachers are supposed to be doing in a classroom are enormous, and how it's like playing a really weird game of bingo to try to hit all of those things in the 30 minutes an administrator is in your classroom to observe, right? So we actually have heard now of teachers who used their class summary reports for the week to prove to an administrator that they really did do those things in class. Empowering the teacher. So another line in the sand I have is that it should be the teacher's choice to share the data. But if you're in an evaluation week, you should be able to press a button and we would send all the summaries to your administrator so they can see, oh yeah, they did do this every day. It wasn't in the half hour I observed, but it was happening every day, right? Like, because isn't that a more robust evaluation than the 30 minutes that got observed?
Really good summary there. And, I think, like Desmond said, as we were kind of like considering some of these different tools out there, he and I have talked a bit about that specific piece, and I really appreciate your thoughtfulness of the design. Again, I haven't used the product, but just from what I've seen and what you've shared here today, seems like there was some deep thought put into that. And I'm sure we could go on and on, but we have some other great questions here. So I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit, okay? And so how about this one? This is probably not a long answer, but how about accuracy? What is the accuracy level of Socrait? And specifically, Desmond and I were chatting about this. How does it handle things like sarcasm?
Great question. So the accuracy level of Socrait is about as good as the current accuracy level of voice-to-text models. Can't really be any better than that, right? But you have to remember where the bar is set. Right now, the bar is set at, what do I remember at the end of a school day? How accurate is my memory of the school day, the school week, the school month, and the school year? And that's pretty low. And so if the current accuracy of voice to text is like 90% or 95%, these are noisy classrooms too, right? And so, it's, what it's picking up from that noise. Let's say it's 90%. That's way better than where the bar is set right now, right? And so what we try to do is, if we've gathered something that is garbled, it just doesn't get surfaced, right? And so we're looking for complete phrases, things that make sense that were said. With AI, it's great because you can kind of fill in little gaps here and there. Like AI is actually we use in our algorithms things that, like, if something seems garbled, what do you think is the likely word that should be? What's the garbled word, and what does it rhyme with? Like things like that, right? And then sarcasm is interesting because we can't tell if something is sarcasm from typed notes, right? And so if you say something that's sarcasm, it just depends on whether we interpret it as a warning or a praise or participation. And we're actually moving towards a model where we force, so maybe by the fall, we'll see if we get to it by the fall, where we force a categorization of everything. So if it doesn't categorize, it probably wouldn't show up, not in the main summaries, right? So, but a lot of teachers, they'll look at it and they'll be like, oh, well, I see why that showed up where it did. I did say that. And it's, how are you supposed to know it was sarcasm, right? I think as we get used to working with tools like this, we'll be probably a little bit more careful about when we use sarcasm and when we don't. Like, it's really totally fine to use sarcasm, especially if you don't use a student's name with it, right? Because it's not going to go anywhere in our system, right? But if you're directly talking to a student, you probably should be direct about what you're warning or praising about, right? And in that case, it shows up just fine.
Now, I want to ask about another stakeholder. When you talked about teachers, you talked about administrators, but how about the parents and students? How are they responding to Socrait? What kind of feedback are you getting from them?
So the students, they know it's being used, and like it just depends on how classes are like super different, right? We've had some teachers tell us their class realizes it's being used and they start to pay attention more to what they're actually doing in class. And they want to know at the end of class, like, how did I do today? Did I do better than yesterday? Did I only have one warning? Did I, like some of the kids who are being a frequent problem will start to pay attention to their behavior because they know there's a record. Yeah, they know there's a record. I've had, I have days, we all have these days. I teach 8th period middle schoolers, right? So, I'll have days occasionally where I'm like, I'm tired of telling you to be quiet. Anyone with 3 warnings today gets an email home to parents. And at that point, the kids are all like counting on their fingers, like, how many warnings did I get? Like, and they shut up, right? Like, they're like, they know it's going to be tracked and they know it's easy for me to write the emails and they know I've done it before. And they get righteous, right? The really interesting thing is, and like the parents so appreciate getting emails that are specific, right? That are like, they get praise emails more now because we can write them. Like no teacher remembers the praises at the end of the day right now. And so like having them available to actually write them is amazing, right? So like I like to say my favorite practice on a weekend is sending out a bunch of praise emails so that the first thing I see on Monday morning is a bunch of positive parent responses about how happy they are to like have heard something good about their kid, right? Um, so I think all in all, it's pretty positive.
Really good. So on the positive side then, do you have a story you could share, just a short one, on how a teacher found Socrait to be useful? Something that's been shared with you even anecdotally.
Well, I've shared a few stories already of how teachers are finding Socrait useful to them, but I'll share a story about one of our middle school teachers. She teaches middle school math. It's a hard thing to teach to middle schoolers, and she was also pregnant while she was using it, so she had pregnancy brain on top of too much to do as a teacher brain. And she said that having the tallies of all the behavior, the reminders of things she said to do all day, like that, it's she just can't imagine not having it, right? In fact, if there's a day like I've done this too, a day I forget to charge my phone and I'm like, or I forget to bring my phone to school. I know it's not something the younger folks do, but I still can forget to bring my phone. You're just like, oh, I've got to remember it all today. Like it's like you feel the impact when you don't have it, right? You realize how much data you were trying to store before, and it makes a real difference in people's quality of life.
It's such a good point. And, we started with you bringing up the cognitive load side, but it's also even beyond that. It's just increasing responsibilities for the profession of education. We have more and more nuance to what we do, more requirements for documentation, et cetera. And man, I just got to say, teaching now is not what it was 30 years ago. And many times it's a negative. It's a much higher load. I reference specifically what lesson plans used to look like when I first started teaching in 2002. And it was like, we all remember those lesson plan books that had like one little square for each subject each day. And it's like, yeah, you could probably find another mechanism, but most of us used the one little square we had to write down our lesson plan for that class period. That was 2002, and things have come a long way since then. But I guess just using that as an example to say, if an administrator came to your room and wanted to see your lesson plans, you provide this lesson plan book that has your whole week on 2 pages. That's how they were formatted. And that was sufficient. Okay, great, your lesson plan here. And now, boy, it's so different. The demands are higher, the expectations, and so with that, it's just, thinking of taking these tools away. It's exactly how I look at technology and EdTech in general. I cannot imagine going back to teaching without technology. All of the assessment data we collect now, whether it's formative or summative, it doesn't matter. Imagine trying to do that with 25 or 30 kids in every class and staying on top of it and having a clear picture as kids come and go of who's getting concepts and who's not, who needs more intervention and more support. Technology facilitates all that, and that's such a beautiful thing. And likewise, hearing you talk about, a teacher's approach to Socrait, I can imagine once you start tasting that and seeing all the documentation ready notes that have been created. Even if you're, say, having to copy paste that, so a kid has a rough day and you need to save that documentation for later, which clearly you're not going to do that for most of the kids on most of the days. But if a kid has a really bad day and you need to kind of document that for more of a permanent record, it's kind of already pre-drafted and ready to go along with that email. And so that idea of like it's lightening the load, I think, is really key.
But here's the thing. You often don't document the data on days. And then when there's an incident, somebody says, well, we need 6 weeks of documentation about this behavior. Well, guess what? If you're using Socrait, you have 6 weeks of documentation about the behavior. So at the point where you're finally like, something has got to be done, I've tried every intervention I can think of, I need to involve other people, you don't have to wait another 6 weeks. It's there for you, right? And on those moments when a child like has a really bad escalation, it escalates out of class, you have everything you said in that process. And the hard thing is that as a teacher, you typically remember the escalation out of class, but you don't remember the antecedent. But if you have the warnings you gave and like how it progressed, it helps you to like look at it neutrally and say, "Oh, I see what happened here."
Really good, Maria. I appreciate you sharing that. And I had another question here. We're going to kind of skip through a little bit of this because our time is getting so short. I'm going to throw it back over to you, Desmond.
This has been a really engaging conversation, and really I appreciate how thoughtful you are as a teacher and as a guest and as a product designer. And it makes me I got to figure out how I can try this in my classroom myself. And so, but for all those who are listening that feel the same way, how can they try Socrait and reach out to you if they have more questions?
So if you go to our website, it's Socrait, SOCRAIT.com. There's a try it button in the corner, and any teacher can try it out for free. And you just sign up. We'll walk you through the process. If you'd like a free phone pouch, there's something you can press to get a free phone pouch, and we'll send you one. But like I said, any kind of Bluetooth device should work. If you want to walk around with a one earpiece on or something like that. And if you're interested in your school using Socrait, because of course it becomes more powerful the more people who are using it. We are doing some free research pilots right now with schools, so your school can try it for free. And they just reach out to me. So it's maria@socrait.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Maria. And you also told us that you have a TikTok, which you want to promote that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, I have a TikTok. It's at Busyness Girl on TikTok. It's BUSYNESSGIRL. So if you want to follow along on this journey of both teaching and running a company, follow me there.
Very good. And we'll put all that contact information and socials in our show notes, so you can just scroll down and click on those. But today we had such a great conversation about how to use AI in the classroom and how to use it not just, yes, as an instructional tool. We talked about that, but we also talked about how to use it as a classroom management tool and to help you as a teacher, as a professional, to better quantify and understand what's happening in your classroom. And the one that stuck out to me, I didn't get to say it at the moment, but so many times I will say, "Oh, I messed up. This question wasn't a good question on the quiz. I realized it later. I'm going to adjust the score." And then I go to put the score in the grade book and I'm like, "Oh, wait, was it this one?" And those kind of notes you mentioned that it does, or adjusting assignments. That sounded to be one of the most attractive parts to me on this. But all the powerful things of helping you communicate better as a teacher and really to support you as a teacher to do your job better and with less cognitive load. Thank you, Maria.
And hey, we want to invite you. If you have questions, send them to us at our website at edtechunpacked.com. Or hey, like this week happened, Desmond, you can just drop your questions on YouTube and we'll just respond to them right there. So you know who you are. We thank you for reaching out this week and getting to engage a bit. You can also find us on social media, so connect with us wherever you're at. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. And we always like to end with a blessing. And this podcast is meant to be a blessing for you. And Maria, I love how your product is designed to be a blessing for the teachers and for the students. And, it is, I think all of us teachers reach a point where we're just done. We just feel overwhelmed. And sometimes we spend years in that. Sometimes it gets better. Sometimes we do a different career. And we want you to keep being a teacher. You are doing great work in your classroom. You are blessing students every day. God has called you to that place for a reason. And we would just want to do everything we can to support you in that. And so check out this product, check out other products to help to dive in to help you lighten your load. But remember, the technology is just a tool. Use the tools that help you, that are a blessing to you. And that's what we want to encourage you to do. And remember, there is no substitute for great teaching. It is not just about the tools and technology you use, but how you foster meaningful relationships with your students to transform their lives. Be blessed.